Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. Today, we are thrilled to welcome comedy legend and icon and probably the godfather of weed culture, Tommy Chong. Tommy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I like that word God in there. I like that. That's a nice, I like that. I like that association.
Yes.
You
know? Well, I got to tell you, Ike and I have been interviewing a lot of celebrities. But when I told friends and family that you were coming on, this was the most excited that I've ever seen them.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Yeah.
They were absolutely thrilled, and they started giving me questions to bring up.
Yeah.
So in anticipation of you coming on, I did a lot of reading, and some things I knew, some I didn't, and found fascinating. You grew up in Canada, and you pursued a music career before comedy, right? Is that?
Yeah, basically, I was just trying to make a living, Mm-hmm. I've been playing music all my life, I'm one of those, what do you call those guys? I grew up in the country, so, so there was no, when you had a job, it was always to help somebody, it wasn't, and that's what I've been doing all my life. Right? I found out in high school when I tried to junior high. Mm-hmm. When I had aspirations to become up there, go to university and do all the brainy stuff, Mm-hmm. But I grew up, I guess, most of my life doing manual labor, mm-hmm. and I had more fun, the white collar job. I had one white collar job in my life, and I enjoyed it to a point. It got boring. It got very boring. White collar jobs. It's hard to stay awake. When I was a kid, the only reason we got dressed up was to go to church. Right. and when you got to church, usually you got up early, and so being dressed up nice always made me drowsy. Because you can't do anything when you're dressed up. You're not allowed to play. You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to do anything because you don't want to ruin your clothes. And so when you stop activity, the only thing to do is sleep.
Well, I was looking at the pic. You were in the group Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers. When I look at pics of you from there, you're unrecognizable when I see those album photos.
That's exactly what my first wife said. long as I was a musician, I could get away with stuff. But as soon as I became a comedian, it was like, okay, you're out of here. Take a hike.
Now, you signed with Gordy from Motown Records?
He sure did. Barry himself he flew all the way from Detroit to Vancouver at Diana Ross's request, mm-hmm. To hear the group, and I think to get a little booty call from Diana, but I'm not going to get into that. But Gordy actually saw the group and signed us right on the spot. Not personally, he had his people do it, everything, but yeah, we got discovered. It was a Hollywood ending kind of thing,
What was that experience like to be with Gordy into the Motown stable, I guess?
Probably the most influential time of my life, mm-hmm. because when I met Barry, right at the not beginning, but in the middle of Motown's huge success. you think about it, Smokey had a lot of hits. The Tops had a lot of hits, and so did Diana Ross and the Supremes, and everybody. They were all Berry Gordy's acts.
Right.
He got the check first. You know what I mean? And so being around a guy like that, and being black and being an ex-auto worker kind of guy, he once told me the reason he was successful was that he was trying to be successful by selling jazz records, and but he found out that pop music was much more lucrative, but he did use his jazz roots to obtain the success that he ultimately had. But meeting Berry Gordy was probably the turning point of my life. Yeah.
Wow. So when did you first? I also heard that you owned the clubs that you performed in. When did that happen? How did that come about?
Well, this is Canada. This is Vancouver. Well, first of all, we introduced rhythm and blues into Calgary, Alberta, Canada, in the West Coast, basically. In fact, we were known as the West Coast Shades, because there was an East Coast Shades. And in fact, our other like competition, as you might call it, or the other band that made big headlines was the band, Dylan's band. Yeah, those guys, Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. That was the other band, and it was Tommy Milton and the Shades, or which actually became Little Daddy and the Bachelors. But yeah, and what happened, because we were so popular, that this club owner friend of ours, who we used to work in his clubs, he bought a building, and it had an empty steakhouse in the bottom, in the basement. And he asked us, do you guys want a club? And we said, yeah. And so it was a rehearsal spot for a while. We got a license and everything, but it was an after hours bottle club. And so it was, we weren't making anything, it was more like a rehearsal space than anything. And don't forget, we had no backing, no financial backing. All of us had other jobs where we'd make money, and playing the music was just more for fun than anything. And if you got paid for it, well, that was like a bonus.
Right.
In fact, back in the early days, we used to take our paycheck and go feast at Chinatown. and spend our money. We'd work all night, to play, to get our $20 or $10 or whatever it was, and then we'd go eat it.
And you brought in, I was reading, you brought in Ike and Tina Turner, and what other groups?
Okay, that was actually that club wasn't given to us. That was the after hours club. No, that the first club, Tommy Milton, who's passed away a couple of years ago, he would drive around and look for gigs for us, and he found this empty converted movie theater, and it was converted into a ballroom, but it was empty, and they used to rent it out for events, like in Canada they call them community centers, or Polish Hall, or the different halls. And so what we did, we went to the city and got a license to open the first nightclub. But the trouble was, it was in a residential area. That was why it wasn't making any money. It was surrounded by nice homes. And so we opened it, and we got the license. And then again, Tommy, my first partner, he said, we got to open big. We need a name act. So we went down to Seattle, and we went to a booking agent there, because Seattle was we used to go to Seattle a lot because that was where we got our music influence from. That it was the closest black ghetto to Vancouver, and so we hooked up with a booking agent, and he got us Ike and Tina Turner.
Wow.
And the review for Tuesday night for $700 for the whole band, the Ikeettes, Tina, Ike, and of course it was a huge success. That club was incredible. But the only problem was, because we were on stage, we weren't not on stage with Ike, but we opened for Ike. In fact, I stood in front of the band and he gave me a nice thumbs up on my guitar playing. And so that was quite a thrill. And then he told everybody that Tina was his sister, so he could hit on all the ladies, you know. but it was such a success. But the only problem was, because it was such a success, we lost our license.
Oh, wow.
Because what happened, the kids from everywhere came. And back in those days, this is the 60s, probably 65, probably around there. When you had a dance or anything like that, the Canadians would show up, but they'd also show up with about 12 cases of beer apiece. and they would drink beer in their car and then throw the bottles outside. You know, as the drunker they got, the more ridiculous they got. And so, all we were worried about was the stage and the people. And we had no security. We had one guy on the door, and no crew to clean up the neighborhood. And so the next day, the neighbors went out to find, about $1,000 worth of empty beer bottles scattered around the neighborhood. And so they were quite wealthy. And so next thing you know, we're at City Hall losing our license. And so, but it was that Ike and Tina Turner concert that had made me quit my one white collar job that I had. I was an insurance inspector.
Oh my gosh!
And what I had to do was go around and make sure that people that bought car insurance were really who they were. Just do a double check. And I learned how to knock on the neighbor's door and make up stories to get them talking about their neighbors and all that stuff. But anyway, and we used to get paid per report. And so I found myself in the office. It was Hooper Homes, by the way, the name of the company. And the night after the concert, counting, I had a couple of $1,000. I'm counting. I'm in my little cubicle counting out my money. and then that's actually when I handed my resignation in and became a full-time musician, club owner. Yeah.
Now, I want to ask if this is true, because this is what I read. I mean, that you were at least partially responsible for discovering the Jackson 5?
I was there. I was definitely there.
I mean, you knew you saw the Jackson 5, you knew right away that this kid's going to be something. I mean,
can you imagine? Like, there was Jerry Butler was the main act, and Bobby Tier and the Vancouvers were like the co stars with them. But the Jackson 5 had won a contest, a high school contest, and the winner was that they got to open for at the Regal Theater for Jerry Butler and Bobby Tier and the Vancouvers. So when we heard Michael on stage, they only sang one song. They only sang "My Girl," but they had the routine down. They sang it better than the Temptations. It was mind-boggling, and you kept looking at little Michael, he was tiny little guy, you know, and this voice is coming out of this little guy, and the dance moves and everything else. And so Bobby Taylor, Bobby was legendary, as he was more infamous than famous. Because back in the day, if you were a lead singer, especially black, you had a choice. You were usually, you had a lot of girls. And for the most, a lot of them had the girls working for them, you know, and I don't mean secretaries, you know, and so Bobby was a legendary figure that had this incredible voice, but never really made the big time because of his extracurricular activities, as they might say. It wasn't done for greed as much as it was done for survival. Mm-hmm. But when Bobby heard the Jackson 5, because Bobby was almost like a kid singer himself. He was in a group called the Pastels, and there again, he never used his real name. He entered a contest with it was the Armed Forces contest during, I think, the 50s, I guess. So, yeah, it was way back, and he had a song called "Been So Long" by the Pastels. You can still get it on Amazon or whatever, Google. "Been So Long" by the Pastels, but he lied and said he was somebody else, or I guess he pretended he was in the armed forces. They came in second anyway. They lost to another group. But Bobby, but when he heard the Jackson 5, especially Michael, he knew this is gold. And so he went. He took the whole family. Joe, not the mother, but Joe and the boys. They all stayed with Bobby in Bobby's apartment in Detroit, and for a month, and they lived there. And then when they finally got Motown, auditioned them and saw them, Joe literally brought me the contract Motown gave him to sign, and because I was the only white guy, or the near white guy, that he knew. And I had horn-rimmed glasses. I looked Jewish. I looked like a Jewish lawyer. And so they brought me the contract, and I didn't read it. Of course I didn't read it, because what are you going to do? You know, Motown gives you a contract, you're going to say, well, yeah, that's what you're going to do. You're going to sign it and hope for the best. Well, they signed it. Yeah, Joe and Bobby. We got a contract for Motown. What do you think, T? And Bobby used to call me T all the time. What do you think, T? And I said, well, I don't know. It feels good. It feels heavy. No, I knew Motown would be good for him, because Motown had a school. What do they call it? Like a finishing school. Mm-hmm. And they taught all the acts how to dance, how to present themselves, how to dress. They even tried to turn Marvin Gaye into like a Frank Sinatra, because Marvin had all that smooth ability, you know. But Marvin Gaye, he resisted that. But yeah. So the Jackson 5, you know, once he got with Motown, it was like a match made in heaven, you know. Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to leave music and start going into comedy?
I got fired from Motown. We got deported from Detroit a bunch of times. When we got discovered in Vancouver, I had American drummer Freddie Miller and Leroy playing piano. They're from America. And so when we got signed with Motown, it was a big celebration. So they went back to Portland to celebrate. And when they tried to get back into Canada, they were refused, because you know, Freddie had a record and Leroy never had papers, and they were black, and so they got refused. And so we had to get some Canadian musicians to fulfill our contractual obligation. And so we ended up in in Detroit with Canadian musicians, which was okay, except for Christmas. They went home, the drummer and the organ player, they're great musicians too. They went home for Christmas, and when they tried to get back to the States, they told them the truth, and because we never had visas, so we all got deported back to Windsor. And so we had to come across the border every day to play Motown. And so I told Barry Gordy, I need a green card. And I don't think Barry even knew what a green card was. But anyways, lawyers did. And so I was, and in the meantime, Bobby Taylor had left the Vancouvers. He went on his own. That's the old hit record, goodbye to the lead singer. And so we were backing up Chris Clark. And right in the middle of the gig with Chris Clark, I had to go do a green card meeting. And the road manager at the time, Johnny Bristow, he said, well, if you miss a gig, you're fired. And I looked at him because it's weird. I've never, I owned the club. I was like the leader of the band. I got a personal relationship with Barry Gordy, and I got a road manager telling me that if I go get my immigration status straight, I'm going to be fired. So what I did, I took the bass player with me. I thought it was insurance. You can't fire both of us. And so what they did when I got back, they fired me. They kept the bass player, and the bass player, the band could have saved me, but that was another reason why I got into comedy, because the first chance. Now these are guys that I've known practically a lot, years and years, and I provided income for them in a band and a Motown contract. And the first chance they got to turn their back on me, they did.
Wow.
Yeah, because they could have said, well, if he's fired, we're fired. But because I wasn't really the leader, or necessary for the music of the band, and by that time, when Bobby was really the leader of the Motown thing, I owned the club, but but it's still Bobby was the lead singer. Whoever's got the gold calls the shot. So when I got fired, and then I had my girlfriend on the road with me as well. I was married with 2 kids, but I also had my girlfriend. I'm a musician. What can I say? And so I had. And she was back when I got fired. She was still back in New Jersey with our new little our child, our love child. And so I had to go back, and I went back, and I told, and then when I got fired, I ended up going to the motel, and my now wife Shelby, she goes, "Oh, you're home early," and I said, "I got fired." And she didn't miss a beat. She said, "That's good. That band sucked. Come to bed." It was what I needed. And so then after we went back to Detroit, and then we're in a like a 25-cent movie theater in Detroit. Used to have them. That was by the way, that was the answer for the Detroit homeless, was having movie theaters open 24 hours. And so it only cost a quarter, 50 cents to get in, and so the homeless could come in there and sleep all night, and then and so we went and seen a movie called I Love You, Alice B. Toklas, in the 25-cent movie theater. And I saw California at its best, in all its glory, all the hippies on Venice Beach. And we're sitting in Detroit, cold, miserable. It wasn't snow, it was slush, it was like rain, snow. It was horrible weather. And so I said to my girlfriend, Shelby, I says, "Let's go to California." The band, obviously the band doesn't want me. Bobby Taylor doesn't want me, and I'm a songwriter. and I've always wanted to go to. I always wanted to go to California, so I went to California. So I figured out a way to get to California with my girlfriend and my wife. By the way, Maxine, she already had got a job in Detroit, and she loved the Black community. She was brought up in Canada, so it was the first time that she lived in an all Black community. So she was enjoying that quite a bit. But when I got to California, I realized, I couldn't leave my family there. So I arranged for them to come to Los Angeles, because my first wife, Maxine, her brother was the drummer of the Three Dog Night. Oh, wow. And so that was the connection. He was stationed in LA. And so they eventually, my two older daughters, Robbie and Ray Dawn, they came, and Maxine came. And eventually we straightened it out. Like I said, when I became a comedian, because up until, well, as long as I was a musician, I could have two families. But the minute I became a comedian, it was like, get out of here. And so she was very kind, and we're still very close. But that was why I got fired. And then I came back to the clubs, and I converted one club into the strip club. The strip club was also given to us by a club owner. The club, they owned the building, and they had a dinner club there, but it was in China. That was a lousy location. And so we put a strip club in there instead. And the strip club was doing great until I came back and changed it into an improvisational nightclub. And that's where I met Cheech.
So Cheech was working as an improv comic as well?
Well, we hired him. No, he was a writer. He was like a music critic for a hippie magazine called Poppin' in Vancouver. And the guy that owned the magazine was a big fan of the strip club improv. And so when he saw that I needed another guy, he immediately told me about Cheech. I think he wanted to get rid of Cheech, tell you the truth. because Cheech, he did. I got a guy that would be perfect for the show. And so next thing I know, I go up, meet Cheech, and when we met each other, we got a little bit back in the day. The dogs, where we act like little dogs. Well, we get on our hands and knees and go around and smell each other's butt, and that's what we did when we first met each other, because I'd never really met a Mexican first up close and talking to, and until I met Cheech. And Cheech didn't know what the hell I was, because I looked like some kind of Mongolian biker, and Cheech, I didn't know what, no one knows. None of the acting group knew what Cheech was. What is he, he looked like, he could be Iranian, could be a native, he could be anything. And when he lived in Calgary, that's where I grew up, Cheech was dodging the draft. He ended up in Calgary. And that's when he found out that he looked like a native, because he'd be hitchhiking and everybody no one would pick him up, except this black guy in a pickup truck. And he rolled down the window and said, "Hey, hop in, Chief."
So how did you guys discuss? You start working on the act right away? You started knowing that you had something?
Well, not right away. Cheech, like I said, I had another partner named Dave. And by the way, he's the Dave, and Dave's not here. Okay. Dave Graham, he's still alive, barely. We communicate. But Dave was my first partner. Because when I converted the club from a strip club into improvisational club, I used the talent that I had. Mm-hmm. But we had a tap dancer. He was MC, named Taps Harris. But when we did the first skit, which was a pajama party on stage, after the show, and all the girls would come over, and then would change from their street clothes into their pajamas. That was the stripping part. And then they would put on music, and then then taps would come over, and taps and the girl singer would come over and join the party. Well, the girl would sing, but taps, they said, "Why do they call you Taps?" And they said, "Well, I'm a tap dancer." "Well, let's see what you can do." Well, he did such a great job that the audience went nuts, and they wanted an encore. And so, as soon as he did the encore, Taps packed his bags and he said, "I'm out of here." He got hired as an MC, and now he had a dance, 2 dances, and tap dancing is hard, man. And he was up there in age, so Taps quit on the spot. And so I said to Dave, my doorman, he was the doorman at the time. I said, "Dave, do you want to MC?" And Dave said, I'll do it if you do it." And so I said, "Oh, okay." And so next thing I know, I'm on stage, and then Dave and I were loving it, because we had such good bits, and I had seen the committee in Second City, so we were using a lot of their premises, not so much their bits as their style and the way of improvising. And so then and then we had a straight man. We had Rick Lenz, who he was a real actor, and he was having fun too. We were having the best time. And in fact, we got the front page of the Vancouver Sun. And the trouble was, it was a picture of Rick, our straight guy, with strippers on either side of him with their titties in his ear. and his wife had no idea what Rick was doing that night. She thought he was playing in a community theater. I got a call from Rick. Rick says, "Man, I can't make it, man. My wife found out." And anyway, the word went out that I need a straight man. Well, at that time, the club, the word had gotten out that we got something going here. This is improv. It was a hippie burlesque, as Cheech calls it. And we oh man, Cheech, then Cheech joined up, and Cheech in the beginning, he was kind of subtle, but he just studied everything, and Cheech is so brilliant. He just picked up, he learned Dave's part better than Dave, let's put it that way. He learned everybody's part just by watching. And then and then my brother fired us because I got fired again. I kept getting fired and kept getting promoted. And so when we got fired, everybody went back to doing what they were doing. The girls went back stripping. Dave went back on the door, working on the door, and it was only Cheech and I were the only ones that wanted to keep performing. And so Cheech and I put a band together, because Cheech, really was a singer, a vocalist, a folk singer in the beginning. And so we put a band together, but we thought we'll do a little comedy first, and then we'll do the music. Well, we never got around to music, because when we had the improv club, we'd do 2 hours of improv and music. And we had a little music at the end where I would play and the girls would dance. But Cheech, Cheech turned out to be a good singer. But when our first gig, we never got around to playing music, because the comedy was so strong. And we did a battle of the bands, and I think we won it. I'm not sure, because I never did hear it back from them. But that's when we never played a bit of music, and we just did our act, and at the time, and we were a success. And that's when I realized we got to come down to LA, and that's what we did. And we were in LA before any comedy clubs. In fact, I think we had a little bit to do with creating comedy clubs, because the only clubs you could work were black clubs that had hired strippers and comedians, and which we worked all of the ones in LA, and a folk club, the Troubadour. And folk clubs were the best for comedians. Oh, it was best because the audience, they're so used to hearing tender, meaningful lyrics, and so they're listening, and they're not drinking that much, and they're really intent. It's like playing for a class of acting students, I mean, they're there to learn, they're to watch. And so when Cheech and I discovered the Troubadour, wow, they discovered us. And the reaction from the audience was, can you imagine? They had a list of maybe 6 or 7 folk singers, and then comes a couple of comedians doing Chicano humor, doing hippie humor, doing humor that no one's ever done before on stage. Can you imagine the response we got? Well, we did.
That's when you first realized that you have something special here.
Yeah, I knew before. In fact, I knew that night when Cheech and I performed, 45 minutes, and you can't fake it. I've been around, comedians all my life playing music, in the black clubs. And so I knew the whole comedy routine, and a lot of it was very tough, because you're playing for drunks that want to dance, and so they're not really, their mind isn't there like a folk club, but Cheech and I, because of the nature, and I always carried my guitar and an amplifier wherever we went with the comedy, because whenever the audience got a little bit too rowdy, which we were used to because of the biker strip club, we could always break into some kind of loud amp music, which is used to calm down drunk bikers.
How did you first start getting noticed on a bigger scale? I mean, that, people started paying attention, that they wanted you to make the records following?
It was Lou Adler. We had done the Troubadour so many times, we were like a regular there, even though we weren't getting paid. The Troubadour would actually call me at home. Are you guys coming down? Now they're not paying us. But they would come, okay, are you guys coming down? It was every Monday night. Every Monday night was Hoot Night, and Monday night became Cheech and Chong night. And so one night, Cheech and Chong night, Lou Adler, and I think we were doing something for the Warner Brothers, because Ted Templeman was also there, Lou, and Lou kind of snuck in on the Warner Brothers showcase, and he put the word out that he'd like to talk to us. And so when we went to his office, I never knew who Lou Adler was. I don't, I really didn't care. Cheech, being a music critic, he knew exactly who he was. And so we went to Lou's office, and when I saw the gold records, in my mind, I said, we can make a comedy record, because I grew up with Lenny Bruce, and I was never a record collector. I was more like a guitar player that would listen to comedy. And so when I saw Lou's record company, it would be perfect to do a record, because we could put music in there like we did. And so we started a career that lasted 7 years and 9 albums. So it was fun, and one Grammy, and 9 nominations. so we did well.
And I heard the other record companies hated you guys.
They did. Well, they had a chance. Three Dog Night tried to manage us for a minute, didn't make it. who else? No, when we got with Lou, man, it was funny. Three Dog Night, they tried to manage us, but it was, you know, they were more music. They weren't comedy at all. Mm-hmm. And so the next time we saw the Three Dog, oh no, I went to them. We'd signed a contract with them, but I went to them and asked them for an advance. We need some money to buy a car because we've been driving around in a scooter. And so I wanted to drive a car, buy a car, and they handed us our contract back. They said, nah, you know, you guys aren't worth it. And then the next time we saw them was in the elevator at the Grammys. We were on our way. We got a Grammy nomination. So did they. I don't think they win when we didn't win either. So that was the next time we saw them.
When did the idea to start transitioning into movies happen? How did that come about?
I have to take credit for that because I got so sick of going to Australia. Because see, I'm the writer of the group, and even though Cheech, you know, writes, I'm the guy that has to put it on paper, you know. And every time we would go to Australia, we'd have to write a new show. I would have to write a new show. And that got tiring. And then all of a sudden I heard, oh, they want you back in Australia. And that was the other thing too, you know. First time when you first see comic for the first time, there's a nice surprise for everybody. But the second and third time now, they've seen that before. And comedy is a lot about surprise, you know. And when you can't surprise people with bits, then it becomes almost like, you know, that's when people can talk over the bit because they've heard them before. And so our thing was staying fresh. And I got tired of having to, because it's like giving birth. You know, you get pains and you get all that stuff, man, anxieties, everything. And so I had made friends with a screenwriter, and we started working on a script. It was going to be the Cheech and Chong's first movie. And I was doing a play on Jack and the Beanstalk, where I called it Jack and the Weedstock. And so we had written a pretty decent script. And so we went to Lou and told Lou, you know, that I told him didn't want to go on the road, I think it's time for us to do the movies, to get into movies. And Lou said, okay, no problem. I'll get you a deal, you know, because he knew all the movie people. And so Lou started meeting with the movie people. But Lou also had this, he owned the records. And so Lou wanted the movie to be Cheech and Chong's greatest hits. He thought that was the working title. Now, I was just more concerned in the writing. And then again, I'm an improv person. So if someone comes up with a new idea, I'm not married to my ideas. I go with them. And so so Lou, you know, there was interest, you know, and then Lou's claim to fame was that he was rich and he didn't need Paramount's money, you know. And so we made a deal with Paramount, and so Lou was arranging, you know, to finance the movie. And that's really a good way to go into a deal, because then the movie company they don't have any, you know, skin in the game, so to speak. You know, if it works, they got everything, and if it doesn't, it's their fault. You know, and so then we started looking for a director, and Rob Reiner was approached. Wow. And he turned it down because of his connection with the committee. Cheech and I were kind of blackballed by Hollywood because of we would do committee-like bits, you know, And in fact, I got my inspiration from the committee and Second City. And so those, and the Saturday Night Live, we've never been on Saturday Night Live. They've had other people play us on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
Oh, wow.
But we were kind of like blackballed out of the whole comedy thing because we were minorities. There's a Chinese and a Mexican, and but what we did, we were looking for a director. So Floyd Mutrux came up, and he had directed American Graffiti, I think, and so his name came up. And so we were going to work with Floyd. Well, in fact, he even got signed. Well, directors, that's not who you really want to work with when you're Cheech and Chong. If anything, you want to work with writers. And Floyd wasn't really a writer. And when he suggested one, it was really lame. And so we had to get rid of Floyd. And so then Lou Adler said, well, Paramount's comfortable with me. Why don't I direct? And I thought, perfect, because that's the way we did our albums. I would write for the most part. I would write it, and then Cheech and I would both perform it, and then we'd send it over to Lou. Lou would finesse it, move stuff around or do whatever he had to do, or ask for more of this, more of that. He was beautiful for the records, and he designed the album covers. He designed the promotion, all that great stuff, And so we went, and then he had the musical ability, like in Basketball Jones. We ended up getting George Harrison to play the guitar intro, and we had Carole King play on it. We had all these who's who's, and then when we did Up in Smoke, Lou was genius with the music, because Up in Smoke turned really into more of a musical than anything. And then but everything was fine until the movie became a hit. And then hits like breaking up a marriage. Everybody wanted to take credit, and Lou, because Lou really was the director. He and the producer, executive producer, and so-called the financier.
Right.
And so we it went to court. I ended up getting sued, and it was kind of messy for a while there, but we straightened everything out, and we got a hit movie. And although Lou and I never worked together again since that movie, because of what went down, But in retrospect, I got to say, everything happened was perfect. Had we gotten paid what we should have gotten paid, we probably wouldn't have done any more movies. We probably would have retired to Mexico or somewhere, But you know how poverty is a necessity of invention.
I just watched the movie again this past week, and it again struck me just how much chemistry that you and Cheech have together, just like very natural, playing off of each other.
Oh, we were, see, neither one of us were actors. Neither one of us were comedians. We all learned this together, and writers. I'd written poetry. That's why we had a hit record with Motown. Does Your Mama Know About Me? That was a poem. And but I never had the ability to do to write, to become a songwriter. And I really think, like I say, I'm a poet more than anything, but I'm also an opportunist. I like to call myself an opportunist because, when you play rhythm guitar, you have a freedom to enjoy all the aspects of the music, you know, the singing, the solos, everything, because you're holding down that rhythm, you know, you're part of that whole thing. And that's why I never became a good guitarist, you know. I never even had my own guitar until I was, you know, well growing up. I always borrowed. I never had respect for a guitar because I never owned one. I always used someone else's. Well, hey, you can use my guitar. So why bother buying one? You know? And then now I got a whole bunch of that I never used.
Now, on the second movie, I read that you hung out with Aykroyd and Belushi a lot because they were filming the Blues Brothers nearby.
Well, not a lot, but they made a point. You see, we kicked Saturday Night Live's ass right from the beginning. Yeah, even before Belushi, Belushi was with Second City in Chicago. And so when the Dave's Not Here record hit, you know, the improv actors hit Cheech and Chong. We were never considered improv actors. We were Cheech and Chong. And Belushi was probably one of our biggest fans. And so Second City tried to do an album, but they try to do it like the improv groups do. You know, they're too intelligent to get down and grungy like Cheech and Chong did. You know? They were way too intelligent. You know, and there are a lot of them, like Mike Nichols. You know, he was an example of an improv. I once talked to Viola Spolin. She was the one that wrote the book on improv, which improvisational acting. And I once talked to her about it because it bothered me that I was such in love with the improv acting that all the improv actors hated me. You know, it's like, why? You know, I love what you guys did. Like Howard Hessman, for instance, he was on WKRP right. Cincinnati. Well, I saw him in San Francisco, head of an improv, the committee. He was like the main guy, and that's where I really got turned on to improvisational acting. Well, I was a big fan of Hessman, but when I go to his clubs, he was so nasty and arrogant on stage to the people. This is when all the anti-war stuff was going on. And so he would take time in between bits to do announcements about this is happening over here. And that's, you know, the protest is going on over here. We're gathering together here. Then he'd say, any questions? And inevitably someone would say, Howard, what's with the red shoes, man? You know? And Howard would get all upset, and you know, he'd brush the guy off. And to me, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but it was like he wore red shoes to get comments like that, so that he could show how nasty he was. I can't think of any other reason. And so there was a lot of the committee. What's the guy, the bass player in the Rob Reiner movie about the rock band? Spinal Tap. Yeah. The bass player. He's also the voice of The Simpsons. Anyway,
Harry Shearer, is that the one?
Harry Shearer, yeah.
Yes.
Big fan of Harry Shearer's. He was on a radio talk show, not radio, but a radio show all during the 60s when I was living in LA. I'd listen to him constantly. And there, the credibility gap. He was with the credibility gap. And I listened to these guys all the time. They were the base foundation of Cheech and Chong, really. But I met Harry one time at some TV award show or something. Anyway, he was sitting at a table, and then someone said something to me, Tommy, mentioned my name, and Harry says, "Are you Tommy Chong?" And I said, "Yeah." And that was that. He didn't say hello. No, he just gave me this weird holier than thou. I don't know what it was, but we were, like I said, Rob Reiner turned down the chance to direct us because he said he was too close to the committee. Now, Cheech, by the way, doesn't agree with me. Cheech doesn't like to have enemies. You know? He doesn't like to be wrong either. And so we wrote two books. I wrote my book and he wrote his version. Well, his version doesn't agree with my version at all, as much as we were together. But what I found out, it was what we did. We used their technique, but we used our own experiences, our own life experiences, our own things that are really meaningful to us, as the basis of our comedy. Because I'm, like I tell people, I'm not an improv actor. I'm not a comedian. I'm not a guitar player. I can do all those things, but that's not who I am. And then they say, well, who are you? And I say, I don't know. I'm still looking.
I do want to ask about one movie that's from the 80s. I remember when it came out, I was so excited, Yellowbeard. It had Cheech and Chong, Monty Python, Marty Feldman, Madeline Kahn, Peter Boyle. I could not wait for that movie. And I read in interviews that some of the Python members say that they hated it, but they had so much fun working on it. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I understood. It was bittersweet. Mm-hmm. It was the first time that a director had taken Cheech away from my custody. Up until that movie, I had full custody of Cheech. But that movie came along, and that's when Cheech really cut the cord. And I had nothing whatsoever to do with his performance, and he had nothing whatsoever to do with my performance. And I had, it was bittersweet. It was a movie that was done for the name thing, for the marquee. It was more for the poster than it was for the absolute, they found a director and they found writers. I think Graham and the Python guys wrote it, but they didn't, I guess they didn't want to, they wanted to make it an American success story, That's why they added Cheech and Chong, But what they did, they might as well use their own stuff, characters, because they never really got Cheech and Chong as, the magic that we had, And so I feel the same way, I don't think I've seen the whole movie.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I have. In fact, I know I haven't really.
I just watched it this past weekend just to see it again. So again, I hadn't seen it since the 80s. I watched it one more time. So they put like basically the Python humor into you and not use your humor.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And like I said, they could, when we started being treated like actors, that's when I pulled away, And same as the Lion King, I turned down the Lion King.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, same thing. They were using Cheech and Chong in name only, because I had nothing. And not only that, but I had Disney was at the time was very anti-pot, and I didn't want to be associated with people that, for the money. It was a money gig, and I pride myself on not accepting a money gig. In fact, I've been in projects where I gave the money back because I couldn't do what I do. It was a movie called, it was Richard Dreyfuss's brother, Lauren Dreyfuss, and David Landsberg. They had written a spoof called Dumb Dicks, something like that. And they had Canon Pictures. And so they wanted me as a director. And so they paid me $250,000 to direct this movie. And I went to Rome and I did the pre-production a little bit, looked at sets, and that. But I'm so used to improv acting and directing and everything. And these guys were the opposite, and they've written some really corny stuff, which I always thought, and I still do, I can always thought that I could fix whatever, comedy is like steering a boat, and I what you want to do, you want to go through the rough waters, but you want to be able to do it in such a way that it doesn't look rough, that so you got to know where to go with comedy. And because certain things add up, you might plant something earlier in the film, but you got to pay it off later in the film. And when you do that, you're playing tricks with people's minds, and that's what keeps their attention, because they realize, and you do these little subtle things to keep their attention. The other thing that with comedy is there's got to be some connection between you and your audience, and that's why sex is usually a good connector, because everybody's had that. That's why we're here on Earth, and there's a lot of connecting things. Music is a good connector too. That's why when I looked at Up in Smoke Again, and I saw how important the music was, because the music and the driving, kept that movie popping along. You never knew what was going to happen. The guys in Rome, I enjoyed Rome. I enjoyed prepping the movie. But when it came down, okay, we're going to shoot something, my only question was, where's the beautiful girl? Because if you got comedy and you're on screen, you need beauty. That's the oldest rule of the book. And these guys, I don't know, Dave and Lauren, I don't know, I don't think they were gay, but they might have been. But they were like adamantly opposed to having any pretty girl in the movie. And when you get approached like that, you're asked to direct a movie, a comedy, and you don't have a pretty girl to go to. You know what I mean? You're going to rely on jokes that don't even make you smile, And so I gladly gave the money back. Wow. And they gladly accepted it.
Well, so you turned down Disney for Lion King, but then they came back and approached you for Zootopia, which you were great in, by the way. So what made you change your mind?
They used me in Zootopia. They used my character. They used my act. Yeah. Like I remember Om with Cheech in Om that bit. Yeah. No, they recognized it. They weren't trying to take the Chong at a Chong, You see, that's what Lion King was trying to do. They were trying to make a little Disney characters, That's what the dogs or hyenas or whatever they were.
The hyenas,
yeah, they're Disney characters, And Cheech was always brags about how much money he made of it, And to me, never about money. When it comes on, it's about the only thing we leave when we die. The only thing we take with us is our reputation. That's the only thing we take with us. We don't take any money, anything. We take our reputation. And to me, protecting my reputation, because I didn't need the money.
Mhm.
And that was the thing. That's why I give the money back with the Dumb Dick movie, because I didn't need. It wasn't about money.
Right.
It was never about money with me.
Zootopia is going to be a series. Have they asked you to reprise your role?
No,
They have not asked.
no.
That's a shame. I hope you do.
I don't think. I personally don't think they will. No.
That's shit. Now, Ike and I were talking about it. You were both in Dancing with the Stars and Masked Singer. How did that come about? I mean, I love both. When you were revealed as the pineapple on Masked Singer, I was like, oh my God.
You're kidding. You didn't know.
That's how my kids know you. My kids know you as the pineapple. They're not familiar with the other work. But
yeah. Well, what happened, my wife wanted to do Dancing with the Stars. She still does, by the way. And so she went for an audition. Our agent got her an audition. And so it got around to who you're married to. And as soon as they found out she was married to me, they said, would he be interested in doing it? And of course, my wife always answers for me. She says, yes, he will be. Yeah, he would love to do the interview. And then the way she tells it, she's it's the interview. You probably won't get it. Just do the interview. It's a nice connection, And so I did the interview, and next thing you know, I'm dancing 7 hours a day for 3 months. That was it was the toughest thing I ever done.
And how about Masked Singer?
Well, the Masked Singer, again, because I did so well with Dancing with the Stars, because I was the oldest guy to make the finals. I made the final. I could have won. I realized I could have won had I had a different partner. Peter was great, but Cheryl wanted. I met her halfway through the thing, and Cheryl said to me, we could win this thing because she's a salsa dancer. I'm a salsa dancer, and we only did one salsa number I only did one salsa number with Peter, and it wasn't. Peter's not really a salsa dancer like Cheryl was, and but it was Dancing with the Stars was tough. The Masked Singer, again, because I was so famous on Dancing with the Stars, they couldn't care less if I could sing or not. They just wanted me there so they could take off the mask. And by the way, it was one of the worst experiences of my life.
Really?
Yeah, because one of the joys of being myself is the fame. I mean, people say, "Oh, I hate the paparazzi." No, I love them. I love doing autographs. I love taking pictures. I don't mind taking pictures. I love being noticed. I love getting seated at a restaurant. I love being invited to all sorts of things, because I know they're inviting me because of who I am, and who I am is the guy that they'll listen. Their kids will listen to them if they say Tommy Chong. Their kids will go, "Oh, you know Tommy Chong?" The kids that usually ignore their parents, they walk into the other room, close the door, on the phone. Yeah, just a minute. Close the door in front of their face. So I'm a connection to the parents and the kids.
Ike was in a movie with Cheech, but they didn't have any scenes together. I was asking, he didn't get to meet him, but they were in the Disney movie together, Race to Which
Who's
Mountain.
that?
Ike, the co-host right here.
Oh, Ike, yeah. That happened to me with the last movie, that one movie I was in with Nick Cage. I said, what's it like working with Nick? I had no idea. I never met him.
Yeah, exactly.
Never saw him. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about hype. All about hype.
I do have to ask you one thing before we let you go there. I want to ask, out of all the stories that you've shared weed with many celebrities, what's the wildest one?
Yeah, well, there's so many. There is so many of them. Yeah, I know people want to do it. I had a good one. What was it? I can't remember. I mean, there's so many with Cheech or the band, all the I put a lot of the stories into the movies, you know. There's one time I was with the first singer, Tommy Milton.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this one. This really happened. You know, Hank Williams Jr., remember him? All my crazy friends are coming over tonight. Well, I had no idea that he was like his dad, which was very, very prejudiced against Black people. I had no idea whatsoever. And so Frank was like a friend. You know, I respected what he did. And I guess he was a big Cheech and Chong fan, like everybody was in the day. And so he did All My Crazy Friends Coming Over Tonight video. And he had Willie Nelson, he had George Jones. And I grew up in Calgary, and so I'm a big country fan. And so it was a thrill meeting George Jones and Chris Christopherson, all the heavies in the country field. Well, Tommy Milton, the Black blues singer, he was also a big country fan. And so I thought nothing of it. He was in Nashville at the time. I said, Tommy, you got to come to the party with me. You know, all our heroes are there. I didn't think for a minute, you know, that I was doing anything weird or wrong. So we get to the party, and I usually find a place to sit and let the world come to me, you know. And I'm sitting there with Tommy, and then people are coming by, but none of the celebs, you know, just the people of the party. And then one drunk girl showed up, and she goes, "Yeah, I really admired what you did." And I said, "What did I do?" She goes, bringing him. Points to Tommy, bringing him. That was great. And I thought, why is it so great? She says, "You didn't know? Hank's the most prejudiced guy in Nashville. And the only thing, if they're like taking a dump in the punch bowl." I had no idea. And because I'm sort of like a civil rights guy, you know, and of course, guys like me always are, you know, because we can pass either way, but we're embedded with the enemy. You know? So that to me, and Tommy was cool, you know, because Tommy grew up in Calgary. He grew up around bigots, you know, and so it didn't bother him at all. And he was very quiet and he's very sexy and very good looking. And it was like, you know, it was like I brought Muhammad Ali, you know, to Ku Klux Klan meeting, you know.
Is Willie Nelson the one guy that you can't outsmoke? I just got to ask that.
No, everybody can outsmoke me. I'm not. That's why I'm still here. That's why I'm still here. I have control over my drug intake. I'm a bodybuilder. That's why I could never. I could never really do anything to hurt myself. You know, I don't drink and I don't eat anything, you know, terrible. I don't overeat. I don't drink, and I don't do anything to excess. You know, I had a chance to do. Oh, this is a story. I asked Tony Viscara. Tony Viscara was Lenny Bruce's right-hand guy when Lenny died. Actually, Tony was the guy that brought him the dope that killed him. So Tony became my real good friend. You know, he was Chicano, and he was a Pachuco. You know, been through it all. And so, but he hung with Lenny. He was Lenny's guy. And so I asked Tony. I said, Tony, you got to tell me what is it about heroin that makes people do what they do? You know, these intelligent people, and all of a sudden they're dead. You know, they don't they know what they're doing? And so, what is this about heroin? And Tony didn't say a word. He reached in his pocket, pulled out a packet of heroin, handed it to me. He says, find out yourself. So I took that heroin, put it in my pocket, and it reminded me of the first time I ever got high. A guy shows up in Calgary, and I'm 18 years old, 17 years old, and hands me a Lenny Bruce record and a joint. And I put the joint in my pocket. And he lit up his own, and it was the first time I got high. And I didn't light up my joint till I got home, and then I lit up and take one toke, put it out, because I was afraid of being hooked on it. So when I got the heroin, I put it in my sock drawer in my house, and I left it there. But I always knew it was there. And then one day I just took it out, looked at it, took it, and flushed it down the toilet. Because I knew that if I were to do it, I would end up like Lenny. I knew it. And so when I got my cancer operation, I had rectal cancer, so they had to cut out the rectum and attach a colostomy bag to me. They put me on Oxycontin, and so now I got a good excuse to check it out, you know. And so there was a little button there that I'd hit if I needed more, and I banged the shit out of it, because I wanted to get the whole experience, and I did. And
how are you feeling now?
Oh, I'm feeling great. But what I did, as soon as I got off, they took me away from the the setup. I knew what it was. I felt good. I was really sharp as a comedian, you know. And here I am doing bits in the hospital, you know, and I was like the hot guy. In fact, they would come by just to get the show, you know. I put on a show for them. But no, you know what? I got turned on to bodybuilding real early, 15 years old. And I've been doing some sort of bodybuilding all my life. And I still will. It's the best high. It is, you know, being straight is one of the best highs you'll ever get, you know. But being straight and rich, whoa.
I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure for me, for Ike. I mean, I really appreciate so much you taking the time to do this with us today. You know, I've been a big fan all my life. I know Ike has as well. We've talked about it.
I have to take a moment. I have had nothing to interject or add or ask on my own, because Jonathan does such a great job. But this is my opportunity to thank you for all the laughs you have given me, because I discovered Up in Smoke when it came out in the movie theaters. I was 16 years old. My best friend and I went to go see what is this crazy movie and who are these crazy guys, and we have not stopped laughing since. And that's probably one of the greatest gifts I think you can bestow upon humanity, let alone everything else that you've done. So this is just my personal thank you to one of my comedic heroes, and appreciate everything that you've done in all those different areas. And thanks for being on our show and sharing your stories. They were absolutely amazing.
My pleasure, and we'll do it again whenever you feel.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, you're not only funny, you're genuine, and that, you know, really, like I said, just an absolute pleasure for us. Welcome, and you're welcome anytime. We'll definitely reach out again. You have so many more stories that I didn't even ask, and I don't want to keep you, but you know, thank you, and you know, again, like Ike said, thank you for all the laughs through the years too, as well.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you again.
Thank you. This has been Pop Culture Retro with Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen, and our special guest, Tommy Chong. Remember, please subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.